Well, today we're going to continue with our Experiencing God study. And so we'll do a shorter version today, but we do want to continue and wrap up this study that we've been going through, Experiencing God, part 4. And we'll look at a couple of verses. And, um, and so just very quickly, a reminder of where we've been so far. Um, we For the first 3 weeks, I've been walking through this cycle of what it's like when we experience God. So first of all, we understand that He's at work all the time, whether we see it or not. It's happening, right? Secondly, He wants relationship with us. He wants us to be part of it. Number three, He invites us closer, like Moses with the burning bush. And then He speaks to us. He gives us a message and He says, here's something for you. And so He speaks to us, and it's in a powerful moment when He does that. And then we have a crisis in our hearts, right? Because we have to think about, okay, am I going to believe what He's telling me? There's this crisis of belief. And so once we decide that, yes, we believe Him, then there are adjustments that we have to make to join Him. And then today we'll talk about this last part, when we obey and experience Him. And so I'm just going to leave the sharing screen up here. But I know you can choose which one you look at. That's the nice thing about the Zoom. You can choose which screen you look at. And so we'll leave you that option there. But the question that I just want us to start with is, which life do you want? We'll talk about this more as we go through, but what life do you want? So I want to go back now and look at where we left Moses whenever we last were looking at this. So if you remember where we left Moses, we had talked about the crisis of belief and making adjustments. And here's what Moses, this strong leader, said: Lord, please send someone else. He's just like, I don't want to do it. But the good news is he didn't say no. He just said, please send someone else. And so God said, okay, you didn't say no. I'm going to send your brother, and off we go. And so sure enough, that's how it goes. Now, contrast that with what we see at the end of Deuteronomy. It's Deuteronomy, actually, chapter 34. Forgive, it says Exodus 34. It should be Deuteronomy chapter 34. Here's how it reads. Moses was 120 years old when he died, okay? So the burning bush happened when he was 80, 40 more years where he's serving the Lord. His eye was undimmed, his vigor unabated. God gave him strength for this journey. Incredible. Jump down to verse 10, Deuteronomy 34:10. And there has not arisen a prophet since in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. Unbelievable. None like him, for all the signs and the wonders that the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his servants and to all his land, and for all the mighty power and all the great deeds of terror that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. And so we see this incredible movement where Moses goes from a guy who's just saying, please send someone else, to finally God uses him in a powerful way. And that's the Moses we think of, this Moses that's like nobody else in the Old Testament, just this amazing vessel, this tool that God uses in a powerful way. So look at what happens, the old life versus the new life. And so I just want us to walk through a couple of things quickly and compare the two Moseses, right? So here's the first Moses that we can see, right? So we think of Moses doing these amazing signs and wonders, right? The plagues of Egypt. Because he said yes and obeyed and followed God as he spoke to him, he got to be a part of this. Now, he could have said no, and he'd still be watching the sheep, right? He could have done that. Here's another thing. Maybe kids, if you're watching, you can tell what happened in this picture. What's happening in this picture? You can tell each other, or you can tell out loud, either way, in the room where you are, or if somebody wants to speak in. It's pretty obvious, right? We think of Moses lifting the staff and the Red Sea being divided. And so the sea is split open. There's a path. Okay, so Moses, because he said yes, because he followed God, because he was brave enough to say, okay, I'll go your way, he got to see that happen. He got to be a part of that. Now, he could have said no, and he'd have been watching the sheep, right? Kids, what about this one? What's happening here? What's that one about? Anybody remember what happened here? There's a rock that's split, and at one point, something was coming out of there, gushing out of there. It was water, right? So Moses hits the rock, and water comes out because they didn't have enough water to drink. Okay, so because Moses said yes, he got to see water come from a rock. Now he could have said no and still be with the sheep. That could have been what he did. Now here's another picture. Remember this one? This is where God physically comes down in some way on Mount Sinai, and there's this fire and smoke, and the people are looking in terror, thinking, "Oh my goodness." Do you remember where Moses is during this? He's on the mountain in the presence of God. Now he could have experienced that. He got to experience that because he said yes, but he could have said no and he'd be back here with the sheep, right? So the point is, when we say yes, yes, it's a difficult thing, and it's not easy, right? We have to pay a high price. We have to make major adjustments to follow God and what he's doing. And it's not easy, it's expensive, but we get to see God, we get to experience him in a whole different way. Now, some of you today, as I think about this, I'm talking abstract, I'm talking about Moses, I'm talking about, departing of the Red Sea and sheep. You're saying, okay, I don't really have that choice between staying with the sheep or parting the Red Sea. So, well, no, actually you do. You do. You say, I'm not a shepherd, I don't watch the sheep. Okay, all right. You're a teacher maybe, which, by the way, teachers are a huge deal. I think every parent right now agrees teachers are a huge deal. It's a great time to be a teacher. I know it's weird, but if you ever wanted to like be valued and maybe even ask for a raise, great time right now because everybody thinks that teachers are the best thing ever. So teachers, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're a student right now. That's a really important job. You're the future. Please learn well because we depend on you for the future. So students, a really important job. Maybe you're a pilot. Obviously, for us to travel here and there, pilots, you're the ones that make it happen. Thank you very much. Maybe you're a CEO, a chief executive officer. You make businesses happen, right? Maybe you're a CFO, chief financial officer. They can't run without money. A COO, a chief operating officer. You keep everything running. Maybe you're a CHO, a chief household officer. You're making things happen at home, and it's not a fun thing necessarily, but hey, the world needs you, right? So all of us have these different roles. Maybe you're an entrepreneur and you're starting new things. We have all these different things, and we think, okay, I'm not a shepherd, I'm this. And it could be that God has called you to that. And so you have a choice of, am I going to glorify God in this? Or am I just going to get by? You see, Moses could have said no to God's call and stayed a shepherd of sheep. But what happened is he said yes, and God gave him the chance to be the shepherd of a whole nation. He used the skills that he learned being a shepherd, but he applied them to a whole nation, more than 1 million people. And so God said, I want you to take who you are, and I'm going to do something different with it. I want you to do it for my glory. And so maybe it's the same for you as a teacher, as a student, as a CFO, a CEO, a pilot, a CHO, an entrepreneur, whatever your role may be. God says, are you going to do this with me? Or are you just going to do it on your own? How's that going to work? So as we think about this, I just want to think about some comparisons. There's another story there, but we won't keep going there. And so I want you to look at this verse here. John 10:10 says this: a thief comes only to steal, to kill, and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. You see, here's what God wants for you. He wants you to have abundant life. Okay, not just alive, but abundant life. That's what he wants for you. But the enemy wants to steal it. He wants to take that away. And he might steal it by letting you settle for the good instead of the God. Right? You can do the good thing or the God thing. And so I want to encourage you, which life are you going to choose? Here's a little example of the choice you have before you. Okay. Now, I don't know who loves chocolate here, but as an American growing up in the US, I thought Hershey's that was it, man. That's chocolate. And then I had the really unique opportunity to travel outside of the US. And so when I went to Europe, they had something that was brown and sweet, but man, it just tasted totally different. It's like real chocolate over there. And so, in different parts of the world, obviously, you may have your favorite. When you compare Hershey's to Lindt chocolate, which one's the real thing? Huh? And maybe some of you would argue about this, but I mean, seriously, there's the cheap version and there's the real version. Okay. And in so many different ways of our life, we have these same choices, but this is the same thing we have with experiencing God. Are we going to settle for the cheap version that the enemy wants us to settle for and not have the God version that God's inviting us to, where we glorify Him with everything that we are and everything that we do? And so what are you going to choose? Which path, which life do you want? And so again, here's this reality. God is at work. God is at work. And it's really up to us whether or not we get to be a part of that. You see, the big difference between people who are just seeing that God is at working and those who actually are with Him in that is these steps that we've talked through. There's a relationship. You listen to the invitation. He speaks and you respond because you believe and you pay the price. You make the adjustments and then you get to obey because you get to experience Him because you are obeying. And so here are the different ways that people respond, right? And so God's at work, and some people, number one, are just unaware. They don't even know it's happening. They don't even hardly believe that there is a God, right? The second group of people is the people who are seeing it. They at least notice, hey, there is a God, and He is doing some stuff. The third group of people are the people who are fans of what God is doing. Oh, look at that stuff God's doing. That's really cool. Yeah, go God, right? But it's still external. Then the fourth group are the people who are experiencing it themselves. They're actually in the game. They're part of the work of God. They're the ones who He's using to make these things happen. And what's the difference? What makes the difference in the people who are in step one or in step four of this? Well, relationship. Like we said, first of all, there's this relationship. And so if you know Him, then you can see and understand what's happening more. And so if you don't have that relationship, that's where it starts. You need to have a relationship with God, and we'll give you a chance to do that in just a couple of minutes. So we need to have a relationship with Him. When we know Him, then we hear what's happening and we see what's on His heart, on His mind, and then we can understand whether or not we are going to obey. The first thing is relationship, so you can know Him. But then secondly, when He reveals to us what He's doing, we have to be willing to obey. We have to be willing to turn away from whatever we think is better and follow His path. And when we do that, we get to experience Him. That's what makes the difference. And so I want to encourage all of us, go deeper in relationship, like this Lent Bible reading plan that begins in February. You don't have to wait till February to read the Bible, though. Read the Bible, pray, just go deeper in your relationship with Him, and then obey whenever He gives you guidance. Obey what He leads you to do. So for those of you who have not yet trusted Christ, I want to always offer the opportunity to trust Him. Romans 5:8 says this: God shows His love for us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. He invites us into relationship. He paid the price for our sin. He loves us so much. He didn't leave us alone to deal with it. He came. Jesus died for us. And so you can trust Jesus today. If you haven't, I encourage you, I invite you, trust Jesus today. Here's a prayer that you can pray. These aren't the only words you can pray to trust Jesus, but these words may be helpful for you. And so if you're ready to trust Jesus, I encourage you just to pray this prayer or one like it. Pray this prayer today. Dear Jesus, I know I'm a sinner. Thank you for dying for me. Today I turn from my own way and I choose to trust you and follow you. Please forgive my sins and make me a new person. I give myself to you. Thank you. Amen. Now, if you've done that, we want to know. We have an email address, yes@dbicc.org. And so if you'll just tell us, I said yes to Jesus, we can celebrate with you and come alongside and encourage you in that new relationship and help you with that. But for all of us, the relationship needs investment. We need to go deeper. And then I want to encourage you, whatever your role is, let's give God the glory in that and experience what he has in that relationship, in that life that he's called us to. I really believe there's some exciting things ahead as we change our perspective to just from just getting by to seeing what God has, experiencing God in our lives and in our work and our families. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to go to breakout rooms. Okay, and so there are two questions for you in the breakout rooms. And so I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and there are two questions. Number one, you can all talk about this. Everybody in the breakout room can talk about this. What's your favorite miracle in the Bible? That's number one, your favorite miracle in the Bible. And then number two, if you could see God do a miracle today, what would it be?